So today, I'm going to replace this. I'm actually taking this car out for a detail with a buddy of mine that owes me one from way back in the day. When I bought this car, it came with OZ Mito wheels on it. And I sold him the wheels for cash money plus a detail. He's very, very good at it. So this car has really never had a buffer on it in my ownership, and it really needs it. But the clutch master is starting to go. Occasionally, if I've been driving at traffic for quite a while, it will actually start engaging gear while I'm in it with the clutch in. So it's not as bad as the green little wagon was, and that was a slave failure. This is a master failure, so they're a little more progressive, and they're a little easier to deal with. All you have to do is pull up the pedal with your foot, and you're pretty much good to go for at least a little while longer. That being said, this one's been like this for almost a year, so I figure it's time. The car doesn't even have a brake booster, so it's really, really easy to change on this car. And as you guys saw last time, got myself a whole bunch of fancy BMW brake fluid, so really have no excuse, especially since I have to fight rush hour traffic back home with the car. So I'm gonna get her up on the lift, and I'll kind of show you what I got going on, and then we'll get this changed out, hopefully half hour or so, maybe a little longer. So this car, I wasn't kidding. That's the hard line down there. That's the old master cylinder. That's really easy to get to. Typically when you have a brake booster, that's just a huge, huge pain. You have to kind of reach from underneath and go kind of a sixth of a turn at a time. The lift just settled on one of the subframe bolts. A little sketchy. I'm actually running a BMW 2002 fluid reservoir, which is kind of nice in the fact that, especially since I don't have it tied down to anything, I can just sort of tip it and drain all the fluid out of the system that way without actually having to completely cycle through all the fluid in it, which granted is probably a good idea with how old it is, but I'm gonna go ahead and not deal with that right now. Yeah, I'm gonna go into the car now, rip the slave out of the transmission and start draining the fluid out of it. So it's supposed to be a quick job, and I look up at the clutch line and it snaps off of the slave cylinder. Sorry, it's a little hard to tell, but that was connected to this, and that was connected to this. It's already a huge pain in the butt to get a slave cylinder out of one of these things because of the ZF. You can tell there's not a whole lot of room up there, so you probably can't tell. But now I have to, hold on a second. I'm gonna restart this with the flashlight on. Okay, that's better. Now I have to replace that soft line. Luckily I have one from the Turbo IX that looks like it's in reasonable condition. Not new by any means, but you know what? It'll do. So, next step is grab my 14 mil and my 11 mil, get that old clutch line out of the car, and then get the new one in. Yep, that's what the end of it's supposed to look like, and that's what I took out. I want to say the one out of the IX is actually in better shape. And I kind of lied. The next thing I'm going to do is take my flare wrench and get the line off of the master cylinder down here, just because it's a little bit easier to deal with it here. And then I can go up into the car and take care of the rest of that up there. Alright, now for the in-car portion. You for sure need a quarter drive ratchet with a 10 mil. That's to take the clutch master cylinder off of the pedal box. You need a 13 millimeter and a 17 millimeter box wrench. That's to get the actuator rod off of the top. This thing where it connects to the pedal. I think that's actually it, but we'll get under there and check it all out. If you're using a new one of these, which I hope you are, there's a little cap in there you want to take out, so I'd recommend grabbing your hook pick or similar and just yanking that right up out of there like that. So next up, in car with the fun stuff. Alright, so there's our old clutch master. You can see at the top 13 mil, 17 mil. And then if you go around the back, you see the two 10 mils right there. The first step I'd recommend, especially if you have a car with one of these giant springs on it, is to take those two 10 mils off. You can start with whichever bolts you want, but that's usually what I start with. So that's what I'm going to go ahead and do now. Okay, I have the two 10 mils out. Next up is get your two wrenches up on there. Oh my, that's fun. And you gotta work them against each other to get that entire thing out. Okay, now the cylinder is completely loose, but you're not home free yet. There's a little plastic fitting at the top of this thing that's very fragile that you actually have to work out. I don't really have a good solution for you here that's foolproof, so just be careful, twist, pull, don't break it. They're cheap. I'd recommend buying one ahead of time if you have the luxury of waiting. And there you have it. There's the little plastic piece. There's your decrepit, nasty ass old master cylinder. Installing the new one's just reverse of removal. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that, and then I'll pick back up under the car. Well, so I reconnected the hard line to the master cylinder up there. Got the new used soft line connected there. And I bent it up a little bit just to make it fit a little bit better. And I've got it hooked into the slave. So now I'm going to come back down with the car, fill the reservoir full of fluid, and then do the hand bleed procedure on this thing. And then come back down here and try very, very hard to not ruin this slave while I install it. Well, she's all bled out. Now I'm gonna possibly have to drop the rear K-member on the transmission to safely get that slave cylinder up in there. But once it's in there, we're good to go. So could have been a lot worse, certainly, than how it ended up being. We'll see. Tight squeeze. Well, she's in. I re-zip tied that wideband on there like a boss. The only other thing I'm going to do is make sure that that 11 mil line is nice and tight. I left it a little bit loose just because I didn't want to risk bending that soft line we just put on. So I'm going to check that real quick and then set her back down.